take the floor.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Tanya. And thanks everybody for patiently waiting for me to arrive. I am actually at the PNACAC conference in Montana, so I was rushing over here to hop on and appreciate your patience. But my name is Lisa Hanson, and I represent Seton Hall University in South Orange, New Jersey. I'm based in the San Francisco Bay Area. I know we're going to get to a little snippet of each of our universities in a second. So for now, I'll turn it over to Shaylor to introduce herself.
And hi, everyone. My name is Shaylor. I am a regional admissions counselor for the University of Nevada, Reno. All of us, we are based regionally. So I think for the most part, we're all in California. So I'm in Northern California. I know Lisa is as well. And I'll hand on over to Anna Marie to introduce herself.
Great, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Anna Marie Fahmy, and I am with Muhlenberg College, which is in Allentown, Pennsylvania. I am based in Southern California, and I cover all of our the West Coast for recruitment. I'm the Associate Director of Admissions for the West Coast at Muhlenberg.
All right, so to get us started, we're going to take you through the senior timeline, looking forward. What are we going to talk about this evening? And basically, these are some of the topics we're going to go over with you, just so that you can really get a head start thinking about all of these things going into summer. We know that there's a lot coming up for you right now with the summertime ahead, but it's a really good thing to keep on your radar. So hopefully this will be very helpful for you in structuring how you want to go forward. So we're going to talk about all these different timelines that you might want to keep track of going forward into the late summer and early fall. Your senior year gets really busy, as you know. It passes really quickly. So we're going to try to help you with that in planning your schedule ahead. So late fall and winter, and then December to April. And then, of course, the exciting time when you're getting all of your decisions and then making your decisions. So here's what we're going to cover for this evening. And then we're going to cover as many questions as we can get to. So next slide, I think, which is AERO. So we are all part of an organization called AERO. That's our acronym. It stands for the Association for Regional Representatives of Oregon and Washington. So while many of our AERO admissions officers are based in either Washington or Oregon, as Shaylor mentioned, we are all based in California. So luckily we get to be part of AERO as well. We all represent universities that are located outside of the Pacific Northwest. So really liking to bring other opportunities, available for you, or open your eyes to other opportunities that you might not always think of that are in other states, maybe on the East Coast, in Anna Marie and my case. So just that's the part of the organization. We do a lot of different events like this for you. And we do have a website, so you can always look at our website and find out who's part of AERO, and maybe there's some interesting universities that you might want to check out that you never even thought of before.
And Lisa, if you could make sure your volume's all the way up, that would be great. Someone had just mentioned you seemed a little quiet.
Okay, is that better?
It's fine. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's good.
Okay. All right, so so here's what we're going to start off with. So when you get to this point in your decision-making process, or you're just going forward into this whole college search process, right? So what you're going to be doing going forward in the summer and the fall, forming that college list. So just so you know, there are a lot of universities and colleges to choose from, and there are over 2,300 four-year colleges and universities alone in the U.S., not to mention options that are outside of the U.S., right? So there's a lot there as well. And then you want to pay attention to the accreditation. So most universities that you find that you might be wanting to apply to or think about will have accreditation through their particular regional accreditation body. So just make sure that that university or college is accredited, because that does count towards college credits going forward, and what you might need to be aware of if you ever want to go on to graduate school or a professional degree program. And of course, we're always going to say this, and your counselors as well, start early, okay? So even though many of you might be going into your senior year, if you haven't started this already, do so the earlier the better. It just kind of gives you a head start. And the earlier, it's kind of like me with a presentation or with a research paper. It's sometimes you drag your feet, and the earlier you get started, then you come up with new ideas and new information that you might want to put on your college list. So earlier you start, the better. Let's just say that. And then just relax. It can be a really fun process. You might, again, find universities and colleges that are recommended to you or that pop up. Your counselors know you well, so they might be able to recommend certain universities that fit the area you're looking to study or your personality or those kinds of things. So just have fun with the process. And then what kinds of, it kind of leads into this next slide. What kind of college fits you best? So this is a lot of information for you, public or private. You might have an idea already, maybe an older brother or sister or cousin, or one of your parents went to a public school, maybe they went to a private school. You might have an idea of those. My recommendation, and I think all of ours as admissions officers and counselors, would be to visit as many as you can, even ones in your backyard. It really kind of gives you kind of a picture or a vibe of what a university looks like at the public level versus a private level. Generally speaking, public schools are going to be on a little bit larger size than a private, not all the time. Some of the public schools are smaller in size too. But sometimes, these are things you want to consider. And then, of course, where do you want to live? Do you want to live right in your backyard? You love the area you grew up in, or are you ready for an adventure? Well, we're hoping on the East Coast you're thinking about adventure too. But you might want to try a new area that you never even thought would fit you. So think about that, the living environment, what kinds of opportunities are available in those areas. And then, of course, what fields of interest are fields of study are of interest to you. So maybe you're interested in the sciences, maybe you're interested in music, maybe performing arts, whatever it could be. These are kinds of things you want to look into too. Maybe you don't even know and you're an open slate and you just don't know yet, and that is perfectly okay too. So don't feel like you have to have it all figured out just yet. You have a lot of time, so just sit back and try to, take stock of what you really like. And then, of course, what size. So I mentioned public versus private, but sometimes students like to be in a very small university, very similar to a private school or a very small public school. Or they might look at a bigger school, like a big state school, because of the sports are amazing and the opportunities for clubs and organizations are amazing. Um, those kinds of things, or just they like a lot of people, so they kind of like to go to a bigger environment. So those are things to keep track of as you're visiting those universities. And then what type of student profile is best for you? So this is going to take into account many different elements. So it can take into account your academic profile, the kind of culture you're looking for, the kinds of activities you're looking for. All those kinds of things are going to come up on your radar as you're looking to kind of find the best fit for you. And then any other factors that are important to you that maybe you don't even realize just yet. And of course, lastly, one of the most important factors, of course, is what is affordable for you. So at the end of the day, you might want to go to your dream school, you might get into your dream school, and you do also need to take into account whether or not it's affordable, whether or not it's going to be, a really good school for you in financial terms. So those are all things to consider. And again, the more you can visit all these different universities to find out these answers, that's going to really help you. All right, and there are some resources for you already. So there are a lot of things you can do going forward to kind of figure out what might be a best match for you. This can include college fairs, and thankfully, we are going to be having the NACAC Fair again in Seattle this year. We're very excited about that as admissions officers, I can tell you that. PNACAC regional fairs, I believe they're going to have one in Portland, but there are regional fairs associated with the PNACAC group as well, which is the Pacific Northwest subregion of the NACAC. And then, of course, different websites that you can visit. So this is a list of various websites: Big Future, My College Options, a Scholar Matcher, Princeton Review, college scorecard. So all of these and many others are out there. And of course, you can always visit our websites. We have a lot of resources available on the websites for all universities where you can take a virtual tour. You can participate in virtual presentations, things of that nature too. But mostly, which I'm going to really encourage you to do over and over again, reach out to your school counselor as well as your any university admissions representative. So your school counselor and or whatever counselor you might be working with is going to be extremely helpful to you in this process because they have a lot of information and they know you. And so they're going to be able to tell you, this school has these programs, this school has those programs, I can see your personality fitting in here or there. So they usually have quite a bit of experience and they know what they're talking about. So definitely don't be shy and reach out to that school counselor that you're working with. I think.
All right, I think it's my turn. Thank you, Lisa. All right, so now we're going to get into the timeline as you move through your senior year. And so particularly starting August through September. And so this first slide is about testing. And it's not the first slide because we think testing is the most important part of the process. I think as we continue to go through this presentation, you'll learn more about holistic admissions review. Hopefully you get a sense that there's so much more than just the SAT or the ACT that goes into how your file is reviewed. But it is important to talk about testing now because of just the timing of when you can take the test. But first and foremost, I think you all are applying to college at a really exciting time where, years prior, students didn't have these many options for test optional colleges. So the door has just been completely open for you all applying to college now. So many colleges are now permanently test optional, or at least test optional maybe for 1 more year, 2 more years, or still kind of figuring it out. And I think there are, so there's test optional and then there's test free. So test optional usually means that the school, you can submit testing or also you don't have to. So that's what test optional means. Test free is you could not submit your testing even if you wanted to. The school just will not look at testing whether you have it or not. And then there are some more gray areas, right? So maybe there's a school that's test optional, but for certain programs or maybe certain scholarships, you have to submit testing. So for example, where I work at Muhlenberg, we have been test optional since 1996, so for a very long time. But if you're applying to Muhlenberg via a partnership that we have with UPenn Dental, you do have to submit the SAT or ACT. So whenever I talk about being test optional at Muhlenberg, I always say, well, do you want to be a dentist? Because if so, let me talk about this program. Otherwise, 99% of our applicants don't have to worry about testing. So just keep that in mind that there are some sort of different levels and there's a spectrum of what sort of test optional means. And then this QR code can take you to something called fairtest.org, which I believe is just a full list of all the colleges that are test optional with little asterisks next to them, like if they're test optional completely or for certain programs. So if you're like, oh my God, how do I know? Just go there and you'll see the complete list of schools. And then the next question, I think, as I said at first, it is very exciting that you're applying to college in this time where just so many more doors are open to you. But at the same time, you may be thinking, well, that makes it more complicated because do I or don't I sort of take the test or submit testing? So you do sort of have to ask yourself those questions. If you want to take the test, keep in mind, there's the SAT and the ACT. Keep look at dates and when you should take that. We recommend scheduling an exam no later than October. A lot of fall deadlines will come sort of after October 15th and afterwards. And then also once you have your scores, you may ask yourself, do I want to retake the test? I think there's data that shows that I think after 3 times, scores tend not to change. So just keep in mind too, sort of it is not uncommon for a student to take the test twice, but I think, a lot of students will take the test once or again, not at all. And lastly, even if you do have your test scores, you might ask yourself, well, I have them, should I submit them for this school? And you can ask colleges that and be, direct and transparent, and they should be transparent back. A general rule of thumb I'll say is each school will have a middle 50%, so like a range of what the testing is. And so keep in mind, maybe if you fall outside of that range, you do want to consider, is it actually better for me if I don't submit this lower test score? So once you have your scores, if you decide to take the test, think about sort of that piece of applying to school that's test optional. Okay, next slide. Okay, like Lisa said, visiting colleges is so important. If I didn't visit colleges in the spring of my senior year, I would have ended up somewhere that I would not have been happy at. The school that I thought I was going to go to, I visited and I was like, I think I'm going to be miserable here. It just wasn't what I thought. It was way too big. The school was spread out over the city. I wanted a more like small residential feel. I didn't know I wanted that until I went to actually visit a school. So keep that in mind. Even if you like, I'm not going to that school, it's too close to home, or I don't want to go, just visit, because you'll be surprised at how much you learn when you physically are at a school. You may find, oh, okay, I do kind of like this vibe of smaller or bigger, or maybe you like the dorms or the way that the college is laid out. You may find that you pay attention to architecture. You're like, I like the Harry Potter feel of this dining hall, or this school is too modern. There's lots of glass buildings. Just keep in mind too, their colleges look and feel so many different ways, and you won't know that until you get there. If you're planning the summer vacation this year, like I would be, Google what schools are within an hour or 2 hour drive of maybe where you're going this summer. You'd be surprised, probably anywhere that you may be, there's a college within an hour or 2 hour drive. And so just a way to sort of kind of tackle two things at once. But also keep in mind too that there are resources. If you don't have, financially, visiting colleges is expensive. There are a lot of colleges that have what are called fly-in programs. And so maybe you can apply to be part of this fly-in program in the fall, and they'll fund your transportation out to visit that school. So a lot of those, ask your counselor about fly-in programs, but a lot of those will open up for students in the summer, typically for students who are either first generation college students or from an underrepresented background. And then the thing I'll say about this visiting colleges is a lot of schools, especially in the fall, like around Indigenous Peoples Day or around Veterans Day, will have open houses. So that's a really good option if you want to visit a school and learn as much as possible. Usually at an open house is going to be a current student panel. There may be alumni or professors, current students you can have lunch with. There are tours. You may be seeing inside of a residence hall. A lot that you can do. That's a pro of a large open house. I would say a con is that you're not visiting the school on a typical college day. So if you want to know what it's like to visit a school just on what a typical day at that school is like, then maybe I'd recommend doing a typical day visit, like just going to the school and doing an info session or a tour, as opposed to a large open house. But both have, their pros and cons. Definitely check in mind if you need to register for a visit ahead of time, whether that's the tour info session. Sometimes those are drop-in, but if you do want to interview with a college, a lot of schools will have virtual or in-person interviews. Those most likely you're going to need to have an appointment for. And then pay attention to school processes and deadlines to request transcripts and other documents. This is where your counselor is going to come really in handy in terms of when you need to request things and how much time you need to give your school to send these documents and when the college needs them by. Make an appointment with your counselor to make sure you're on the right track, and pay attention to what your counselor is telling you. If there's an event happening in the College and Career Center that you should attend, like this virtual event, so just make sure that you are paying attention to the appropriate information, so that way you are doing your best job to apply to college. Okay, writing essays. So there are colleges that will require an essay. There are colleges that don't. If you're applying to a school on the Common App, has, 500 colleges are on the Common App. I always feel like I forget that number. It's a large amount. There's also the Coalition App. Different states or colleges may have their own applications as well. So, generally speaking, if you're going to be doing writing a personal statement as part of your college application, you want to keep track of those topics or what exactly you have to write. A personal statement for example, for the Common App is about 650 words. So that's, a few paragraphs. There may be some other shorter essays, like 100 to 200 words, that are in addition to that personal statement. Some colleges may ask, why are you interested in applying to our school? Some colleges ask really wonky prompts. I remember one that was like, your autobiography is 600 pages, submit page 496. And you're like, what? It really abstract. So maybe you like that. I think you can also learn about the vibe of a school by figuring out sort of what questions they're asking you in the application, right? And then identify people who can write letters of recommendation for you. So if you're applying to a college, some colleges will not require letters of rec. Some colleges will require 2 or 1. If a college does require letters of recommendation, usually they want them from academic teachers and also maybe your counselor as well. And the idea behind the counselor letter of recommendation is so that way your counselor can sort of provide information about you and the context of your school. Not everybody knows their counselor. Your teacher is someone who knows you in the classroom and can speak to sort of your achievements and your performance and your personality in the classroom. So I think that's helpful is to give you a resume or just some sort of like bullet point list to your teachers for, here's some achievements and some things that I'm interested in or things I've been involved in, just to kind of jog the memory of things that they can talk about in your letter of recommendation. And then also make sure you give your recommenders time and then send a thank you note afterwards. I think that's really nice. And maybe not everyone does it. So it's good to do that and thank them for the time that it takes to write the letter. One thing I'll say too about that is keep in mind that there are, you want to make sure that you keep on top of when your teachers, for example, need to submit your letter of recommendation. But if it's, October 15th and the letter isn't due until November 15th, don't ask them, you haven't submitted it yet. What happened? They still have a month. So definitely you want to be on top of it, but also give people some grace and breathing room to know that they're going to do that for you, that they're in your court in terms of this process as well. All right. I think I have. Like I said, the college essay, so why is it important? It really helps us get to know you beyond just things like numbers, grades, test scores. This is something that you have total control over, right? Your grades are, things that happened in the past, other sorts of things that are part of your application, you don't have total control over, but your essay, you get to write and you get to focus on. And this is where we really get to learn about you as a person, your story, what interests you, what fascinates you, sort of, or what are you going to bring to the college and what kind of person are you? And so it really helps us get a sense. It really makes the process personal. And it really helps me get to know what you're like as a person, because we're not just admitting students, we're admitting roommates, friends. So the personal essay really makes your application come to life. And I think I have a little bit more about the essay on the next slide that I'll talk about. Yes. Okay. So tips to remember when you're writing your essay. And there are a lot of resources online, and I'm sure other presentations that your school will do as you get into the summer and senior year about writing the essay. But here are some tips I'll share now. Be mindful of formatting, address the prompt, if any, make sure you actually answer the question that is posed. Be engaging, be passionate, right? I want to read about something that you're interested in. And be direct, right? So I think it's really important to not include so much fluff in your essay. I think oftentimes when you're writing for history or English class or even in a science lab, there's a lot of context that you get, right? You don't need to do as much of that in a personal statement. So I'll give you an example. Reading an essay about your experience at summer camp. I don't need a paragraph about how green the grass was or the log cabins or just the look and the feel of the nature of the camp. That's not important. If I'm reading a John Steinbeck novel, yeah, probably, I'm being entertained, but I don't need that in your essay. I want to know, why are you writing about this? Why did you choose this topic? What am I going to learn about? Is it the community at camp that really shaped who you are as a person? Is it the fact that you feel like you can be yourself there as opposed to maybe you don't feel that way at home or at school? Why are you telling me this? And that's what I want to know about. So don't be afraid to not include that flowery language, just really get to the point, because this is what we want to get to know you in this process. And same thing if you're writing about somebody else, maybe the impact your grandma had on you. Again, you're writing about you, not your grandma. So make sure it's an essay about you. And I always have someone proofread your essay and ask them, what do you think my essay is about? Or what did you take from this? And if it's opposite from what you thought, well, then you got your answer and you got to rewrite it. And last thing I'll say, because I know we're probably coming at time for this, is don't be afraid to delete stuff once you're writing your essay. I find that when I'm helping students write their essay, oftentimes if it's like, let's say 5 paragraphs, paragraph 3 is actually their beginning, and the first 2 paragraphs we just throw out and put in a delete or throw in another Word document. So don't be afraid as you're writing. Sometimes you just have to do the word vomit and get stuff out on paper and then tighten it up later. So, all right, I think that's the end of my time.
Yes, so now we're going to more formally talk about the timeline of the application process. So integrating all of the topics and relevant information that Anna Marie and Lisa had provided for you and actually putting it on the calendar. So maybe you could write it down or know when you should be doing this or when you should be preparing for this. And as you see things on the screen, you don't have to do everything. So if we're looking here, applying to schools, if you're not a spreadsheet person, that's okay. If you have another way of keeping track of the schools you're interested in, do what works best for you. If you like to write it down physically, if you need to talk it out with someone, if you do create a spreadsheet, that's excellent. If you just know there's one school you want to apply to, ultimately, the decision is going to be up to you and your family what that process is going to look like individually. But overall, this process is going to be important to recognize for a timeline and for dates and deadlines. So as we've already talked about, reaching out to us, reaching out to your high school counselor is very important and pertinent very early on. We can help you determine, you know what, if you want to meet maybe an early action deadline, or if you want to meet our scholarship deadline, please make sure to apply by X date. So it's really important you at least establish those and maybe have those somewhere so you can refer back to them when you do need them. Another very important point that's going to happen very early on in your senior year is the FAFSA. So that FAFSA is that free application for federal aid, and it's very important that you apply as soon as you can. It opens up on October 1st. Schools have their various deadlines for FAFSA. They might have a priority deadline. So really what I encourage you and your families to do is to sit down that weekend when it opens and complete it. It really doesn't take too long. I know it can sound daunting, all that tax information, but if you, again, talk to your high school counselor pretty early on and you use a data retrieval tool for your tax information, ultimately, it's really not too bad. So definitely make time to do that. And as we're talking about time for FAFSA, it's also really important to make time for other scholarships as well. So every school is going to have their own scholarship process, but a lot of the times there are so many external scholarships. Look at those. Dedicate some time to actually maybe writing an essay for a scholarship that's going to be local, or maybe that you do find one of those scholarship websites. I personally like to always encourage students to do a lot of local scholarships. They might not be the big $10,000 scholarships, but they are going to have a smaller pool of applicants typically. So you do have a higher chance of receiving them. And ultimately, all of those $500, $200, $1,000 scholarships do add up. So making time for that is going to be very worth your while. So, you know, talk to grandma, grandpa, aunt, your uncle, your neighbor's friend. Talk to your high school counselor and figure out what scholarships you should be looking at that are going to be best for you. And then as we're like kicking into gear, maybe, you know, some deadlines are coming up. It's around Thanksgiving time and the holidays are coming up in the winter. These are when deadlines are really going to start creeping up. So this is where, again, at the beginning of senior year is really important. You knew when are the deadlines for these schools that I really want to apply for? What do I need to do in order to meet these? So again, taking all that into account, I need to have an application for this that includes an essay, that includes letters of recommendation. What do I need for it? There could be scholarship and financial aid deadlines that are happening in this time period. Deadlines we'll say all day long are very important, but they're so individual per school. So again, that's very important to connect to a college admissions counselor. Rolling admissions, we haven't talked about that yet. You might be a little bit confused about when should I apply for rolling admissions? What is rolling admissions? So different from a school that might say, apply by November 1st. If you don't meet that deadline, I'm sorry, you're not going to be able to apply. Rolling admissions, their application typically opens up at the beginning of your senior year, and you can apply at any point, pretty much for mostly the entirety of your senior year. So for example, University of Nevada, where application opens up in September, we close in April. You can apply at any time in that time period. If you have your application, you have all the documents we need in, we evaluate you right away. So you get a decision pretty quickly, but when to apply for that, you want to apply sooner because again, typically scholarship deadlines are earlier and they are going to be in this December or April time period. And again, FAFSA is still very pertinent. Some schools might have deposit deadlines, so maybe you're doing early action, early decision, and those schools might need you to make a decision very early on, maybe before some other decisions are out. And that is going to be a very important conversation to have with your families and with your high school counselor. And as you're getting more decisions and you filled out your FAFSA, you've met the scholarship deadline for a said university you applied to, this is going to be very important to sit down and figure out, okay, I know what the school costs. How much am I going to actually pay after I apply any loans, grants, scholarships, or any other additional aid that I receive to this university? So one, this is a great point where admissions counselor is a great source of resource. Sometimes schools might offer appointments with their financial aid counselors. Admissions counselors are not fully well-versed in financial aid as we would love to be. So financial aid offices are really going to be the best point of contact, but an admissions officer can always direct you or at least help you answer some basic information. But it's very important to start having those conversations because I've found personally that price is a large factor for where students do decide to end up going to college. So it's very important to start making those connections. So you hopefully have already established that with their admissions counselor. You could establish that with other students who are already attending the university, maybe talking to them about it. You can talk to incoming freshmen that maybe you haven't met yet on social medias. It's very important that you have that network, you're using that network, so you do have a decision by the time any deposit deadlines are coming up. May 1st is big. Not every school does have a May 1st deposit deadline, but maybe around like February through April, you'll start hearing a lot of decisions. You'll start hearing a lot of financial aid information. So that's very important to start thinking about that at that point. And maybe the more exciting timeline out of all of this, you've figured out where you want to go and get excited for the school year. So, get ready for orientation, get ready to move into the residence halls, make sure you've submitted all the documentation we need, namely your final high school transcript. That's very important. We want to know that you actually graduated from high school. If you need to save up some money for any additional fees for college, you can do so by getting a job. If you're going to maybe take any summer classes to prepare, great. If you just want to enjoy your summer, great. Every person's different. So don't feel like you're going to be behind also if you're not getting a job or if you're not doing any sort of extracurriculars. You can also totally enjoy your summer. So really getting excited at this point is top priority for everyone here. And that's really the more formal, I wouldn't want to say stuffy, but the overload of information part of this presentation. So all three of us have dedicated time to more specifically talk about our university. We'll do a quick about 2 to 3 minute spiel for all of us, and then we're going to have a large amount of time for questions. So we'll just start off with my university since I am already speaking. So I am with University of Nevada, Reno. My contact info is on the screen. I am your main point of contact. So while I do live in Northern California, please reach out to me if you have questions about the university. We are located in Reno, Nevada, which is in Northern Nevada. So we are 45 minutes from Lake Tahoe. And for reference, we are an 8-hour drive from Las Vegas. So you're gonna have more of that high desert Sierra Nevadas experience. We are a tier 1 research institution. We have about 18,000 undergraduate students. We are part of the Western Undergraduate Exchange, which if you qualify, you could save about $12,700 on tuition. If you don't know what WUI is, please talk to your high school counselor. That is an amazing resource if you stay on the West Coast of the country. We are a Division I school. We're part of the Mountain West Conference. We do have an honors college on campus, so smaller class sizes, priority registration. None of our programs require any additional application. As long as you apply to our university, you can study whatever you choose. So we do have a lot of really cool things going on. You'll see from these photos, we do have a green traditional brick campus feel, and it's all in one area. While we are really close to downtown Reno, we do have a traditional campus feel. And we have a lot of programs. We have 145 different academic programs. They really do range in variety. We have everything from engineering to graphic design, social work. We have journalism. We have 4-year education degrees. We have chemistry. We have astronomy. We've got a lot going on. So if you want to know a little bit more about what we do offer, please reach out to me. And we're always kind of growing and expanding. We have a new parking garage, which is very exciting for our new incoming students. We have a new business building and new agriculture building being built. And I like to leave off on some photos. Reno is actually very beautiful. If you've been to Lake Tahoe, great. Come out to Reno, come check us out. Please take a tour. We have tours all the time throughout the summer. So if your travelers are taking you to Lake Tahoe, maybe even Napa, we're really not that far from Napa, about a 2-hour drive east, please come over and check us out. We would love to have you. We'll hand it on over to Muhlenberg.
Great, thanks, Shayla. You're actually closer to all like the California tourist spots than you are to Vegas, so that's good to know. Hi, everyone. So my name is Anna Marie Fahmy, and I'm the Regional Associate Director of Admissions for the West Coast at Muhlenberg College. I always like to start my presentations by explaining how to pronounce it, our name, because I know it can be confusing. So it's Muhlenberg. Easy way to remember that is our mascot is a mule, the animal. So his name is Marty the Mule. Next slide. So Muhlenberg College, we are a small private liberal arts college in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Allentown is actually the third largest city in Pennsylvania, about 120,000 people. So it's not a small rural college town. We're actually pretty significant in size. To me, it feels like a suburban and urban at the same time because you're within Allentown. We have a historic and growing downtown with museums and events and art scene, but you're also a short campus shuttle drive away from your suburban necessities like Target, the movie theater, Starbucks. So I think it's a good mix of both. And we're also an hour and a half outside of New York City and an hour outside of Philly. And students do go into those areas to see Broadway shows on the weekend or internships or other things. And Muhlenberg is small, just about 2,000 students, highly residential. Almost all of our students live on campus for all 4 years, about 91%. As a small school, we're small and we're welcoming. If you see my virtual background, also on the picture on the slide, you see red doors. Every exterior door at Muhlenberg is bright red, and that's a sign of welcome in the Lutheran faith. So I love being on campus because it's just a sea of green and then pops of red everywhere. It's a beautiful campus, and the red doors really are a good sign of welcome. Next slide. So as a welcoming place, we want to make sure that you have the freedom to study what you want. Could you go to the next slide, Shaylor? Okay. So here are a list of all of our programs. About 30% of our students double major. Our most popular majors include theater, biology, business, psychology, and politics. Theater, we're known for our strength in the performing arts. Non-majors can be involved in our performing arts and visual arts programs, and auditions are also not required for admission to the major. So I think it works a little bit differently than what you may know for like traditional BFA applying to arts programs. Muhlenberg does not admit by major or by program. So you're applying to us generally, and then you have the first 2 years at Muhlenberg to figure out what you want to study. And you can also, like I said, double major. So students can do theater and political science. That's what our student body president is doing, or dance and biology. Outside of the performing arts, I think pre-health and the sciences in general is also something that draws students to our campus, particularly pre-med. Our medical school acceptance rate has been 87% for the last few years. And we also have a pre-dental partnership, like I mentioned at the beginning, with UPenn Dental. And lastly, I'll highlight politics. I think Pennsylvania is just a great place to be for if you're interested in politics, right? We have a polling center on campus where you can engage with local Pennsylvania voters. We also have one of the highest student voting rates in the country. Then the last slide, just a little bit about our deadlines. As Shaylor was talking about earlier, it's important to keep in mind sort of schools that have rolling or other or actual deadlines. We have early decision, which is binding. We have 2 different dates for that, and then our traditional application option regular decision. I'm happy to answer any other questions, and I'll put the link to our information mailing list in the chat so you can fill out if you'd like to learn more. I'll turn it over to Lisa.
All right, thanks so much, Anna Marie. So hi, everybody. Again, my name is Lisa Hanson with Seton Hall University. So Seton Hall is a leading Catholic university located just outside of New York City, only 14 miles away, a 30-minute train ride by subway or train from our campus. The train station is only a 10-minute walk. So really, it only takes 30 minutes to get to Manhattan from there, which is very exciting for our students because they have the best of both worlds. They can live in a really nice suburban village type of setting and then be in New York City within minutes, and lots of opportunities there, not only for fun and adventure, those Broadway shows are calling, but also many, many internships. Also, we're only an hour and a half from Philadelphia, not too far from where Muhlenberg actually is, and then also really close to the Newark airport. Usually our families visiting fly into Newark. And we are close to outdoor activities too. So if the outdoors are calling your name, we have those trails available too. We are considered a mid-sized university, just a little over 6,000 undergraduate students. And for our size, very diverse. We actually have risen. I needed to change the slide, but our diversity rate is now up to 48%. So quite diverse. As you can imagine, we pull a lot of our students from the East Coast. But the West Coast is growing. California is our 3rd largest out-of-state population. So a lot of students finding us from the West Coast too. And then next slide, please. For our majors, we have a lot of majors. We have over 90 different programs that we offer, and they really range anywhere from all the liberal arts opportunities to sciences, engineering, graphic arts, international relations. So I'll talk about some of the ones that are very popular amongst our students. So I would say students from the West Coast typically will be gravitating towards Seton Hall for that access to New York City. And because of that, they find really great business opportunities and business internships. Our business school is excellent. It's ranked very highly nationally. It's AACSB accredited, which is a fancy term for good accreditation to have if you want to be going into accounting or any other kind of graduate business field. We have a mock trading room where students learn to trade with a real fund of money. We have a sports polling center where students work directly with ESPN to conduct sports polls. We have a lot going on in our business school. Many internships, so many we don't have enough students to fill them. Then we have our communication and arts. Of course, being next to New York City, lots of students do go to work for all those major TV networks, radio stations. Also, many have gone on to intern and or perform on Broadway. So that's very exciting. Our radio station is Marconi Award winner and also has been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So that's always fun for students to work at our radio station. Then our diplomacy and international students, we have a direct alliance with the United Nations of America in New York City. So a lot of our students in our School of Diplomacy and International Relations do internships with the UN, also embassies domestically or abroad. They also do a lot of internships with, organizations like the FBI, the CIA, the Secret Service, different things like that. Kind of depends on what you want to go into. And then we've got great healthcare opportunities. So we have direct entry nursing. We also have dual degree or 6-year programs for physician assistant, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech and language pathology, and a 5-year athletic training program. So overall, Seton Hall is known for outcomes. So you can see here we're ranked among the top 5 for our internship opportunities. Number 4, most of our students do anywhere between 3 to 5 internships before they graduate. So they are very well on their way to establishing their career. Many end up with multiple job offers. I was just on a virtual open house the other day where a student was having to decide between 3 different job offers and the next day or two. So it was a great problem to have. So we'd like to see that our students are well on their way to finding those first jobs and getting off their parents' payroll. So next slide, please. And then Seton Hall, another slide about the numbers. Here we feature our Mr. Pirate. So our pirate is our mascot. We are the Seton Hall Pirates with Division I athletics, 14 different Division I athletic teams. We also do have club sports and intramural sports, of course, but some great numbers to mention. We have a great medical school. We also have a fabulous law school where we offer dual degree programs into law as well. Business leadership program is ranked #1 in the country. So lots of different opportunities for our students to explore at Seton Hall. So I hope you can come visit us too. We are so close to New York City. So if you're headed to that area, jump on a train, get to South Orange, New Jersey, and you'll be just steps away from our campus. So hopefully you can come visit us soon.
All right, so that we do have some time left. So about 15 minutes or so to answer some questions. And I do know we had one in the chat, so I'm just gonna ask it out and either of you can answer it. In regards to letters of recommendation, should they be specific to an individual program? So this individual said, for example, if you're applying to a physics program, should those recommendations be primarily from science teachers?
Question. I'd say first definitely check with the university, the admissions office, or the program itself, because sometimes they will clearly lay out what their preference is. If they don't, I'd ask, especially if you're applying to a like if you're applying to physics at a school, right? And if you don't see any sort of information on the website of what they prefer, definitely ask. I will say, I think if, for example, like a college like mine, where we don't admit by major or by program, we're just applying to the college generally. We're a liberal arts school, so I think for us, we like to see that students are sort of multi-interested and multi-talented, right? So, whether that's getting letters of recommendation from 2 different subject areas, just to kind of, I can't talk anymore. Just to round out your application. So anyway, just keep that in mind too, is that some schools may list that out and some schools may not. I don't know if you all have any other preference or ideas.
Yeah, I would say, like Anna Marie mentioned, it really depends on the university. And I think that if it is a super selective university and or physics program, for example, and it's pretty tough to get into that physics program, you've already identified that, you might want to definitely, it's in your best interest to reach out to them, reach out to that admissions counselor and or the university. And we're going to say this a lot. Unfortunately, it depends on the university, it depends on their program, it depends on how they operate. So really important, and we're going to all encourage you here tonight, all of us. I know my colleagues as well. We love to get in touch with you. We love for you to reach out to us because we want to provide you with the answers so it's not a mystery. And so please don't feel afraid to do that, because that's what we're here for.
Absolutely. And I know I did answer this question in the chat, but I'm still going to answer it out loud because that's better for the recording. In regards to what Scholarship Sunday is, it's not a phrase that's necessarily universally used and is like a formal word you'll find in the dictionary. It's more or less just saying dedicate some time to apply for scholarships. Scholarship Sunday is a really great alliteration. That's probably why it's used. If you apply for scholarships on Wednesday, that's great too. It totally is whatever works best for you. And let's see, so coming in, so some advice on how in-state and out-of-state differs from admissions and fee perspective. So I'm assuming you're probably thinking like the cost of tuition if you're an out-of-state or in-state student.
You can start, Shaylor, because I think you might want to talk about WUI, right?
Yeah, I can totally do that. So that also comes into play when you're looking at a private versus a public school. So private schools just have one cost of tuition. It doesn't matter whether you're an in-state student or an out-of-state student. If you're attending Harvard, they have one price. And so that's going to be that one sticker price, where that varies if you're attending a public institution, whereas they're going to have an in-state price. So the University of Nevada has our in-state Nevada price for Nevada residents. And then anyone coming from any other state has an out-of-state price. Now, typically, there's a pretty big difference. So in-state at the University of Nevada, about $7,000 per year. Out-of-state is about $22,000 for the year. So that's definitely something to consider. That's why scholarships are important. And in my case, WUI, or the Western Undergraduate Exchange, is very important because that cuts down your tuition down to about $11,000 per the year. So there's a lot of different ways to kind of figure out how can I get a reduced tuition rate. Same for you, Anna Marie. My words are rolling at an institution. But in general, public schools have in-state and out-of-state, privates do not.
And another thing I'll add that is sort of beyond just the public versus private in terms of what the cost of college is you may find that there's that like as Shaylor said, the sort of that price of what the school costs. Like this school is $70,000 for tuition, room and board, everything. But that's not what everybody pays, right? Some students will pay that amount. Some students will pay 40, some students will pay $0 or $1, right? So it just depends on the amount of scholarships and financial aid that the school has and that the student receives. So the sticker price may not be what you end up having to pay.
Right. And I know Shaylor talked about this briefly before, scholarships. So sometimes, like she mentioned earlier, the earlier you apply, the better chance you might have to get additional scholarship money. It really depends on the university and kind of what they're looking for in their pool and how much scholarship money they start with versus how much is available towards the end of that admission cycle. So it is definitely in your best interest to apply not only for scholarship consideration, but also I would say just to show that you're very interested in that particular university, because that does show us that you're pretty interested. If you're applying in October or November, that shows that we're on your radar, right? So if it comes to the point where you want to contest or appeal for more scholarship money, well, we're going to look at that as a university and say, I'm pretty sure if we give them a little bit more money, they might come and be part of our community. So those kinds of factors are really important. And I know earlier was mentioned the external scholarships. There are a lot of external scholarships out there that are really random kind of scholarships too. I've heard students tell me about scholarships for very tall students or students that have, a specific characteristic. I mean, there's some that I've never even heard of. So those are out there. And then also, I know Shaylor mentioned this too, pay attention to those scholarship deadlines. So for Seton Hall, I'll just say specifically for us, we do have scholarship deadlines for our special scholarships. And those are scholarships like our debate scholarship, which can be a very generous scholarship. Um, Scholarships for pep band or other little things like that, other definite scholarships that we offer, that you want to keep track of those scholarship deadlines if you're particularly interested in a specific university.
And I'm going to jump on over to the Honors College. I know that I have one, so I'm going to, either of you are feel free to answer that. Not every university has an Honors College. And historically, the idea of an Honors College is mostly because so many students were going to private schools to get this small class size experience, and large publics, for example, we're thinking, you know what, we want to offer that. We're a large public school, so we might not be able to have 10 people in a class, but we want to offer something where they can have that personalized experience. So honors colleges did really come about. So University of Oregon is really like the first big honors college on the West Coast, for example. And the idea is that you do get those small class sizes. You have professors that are only there to teach honors students, or they request to teach honors students. So they want to be around those types of students that might be pushing themselves a little bit more. Honors colleges also have maybe special access to research opportunities. There might be certain scholarships for honors students. There could be more additional study abroad opportunities. There could be an opportunity to write a thesis. You might have to do volunteer work. So that's a lot to take in. So ultimately, if you're looking to maybe have a small class size experience, not necessarily at a private, you can look at maybe some publics and honors colleges, but that's not only what it's all about. So either of you are welcome to add to that. Or move on to another question too.
We don't have an honors college, but we have honors programs that students may be selected for at the time of admission. So these aren't ones that you would apply to, but it's just sort of, you know, our top applicants, we may offer this sort of, for example, we have one for pre-med students. So it's a smaller cohort, kind of like what Shayla was talking about. It's a smaller cohort that students would be a part of at our school and take certain classes and have certain speaker events, internships, things like that. And that comes with a $5,000 a year award scholarship. On that note, I'll also say too, I know there are a lot of questions in the chat about when to apply for scholarships and grants. And so I think that this can be a parallel process, right? You're applying to college, but then there's also figuring out how to pay for it. But those processes may also end up merging too, right? Thinking about college, the colleges themselves give out scholarships and grants, right? So every college that if you're interested in, every college is supposed to have something called the net price calculator. And so you can get a sense of, if you put in your family income and some other information, get a sense of what it may actually cost to attend that college with the aid that they would be giving you. And keep in mind too, if you and your family are looking for need-based aid, so that's based on your family income and how much you can afford to pay, versus hoping, if you're not applying for sort of that aid, but you're hoping for some other scholarships. So there are outside scholarships and grants, but then there's also colleges that will give you money to go there.
And for the question for anyone who has a son in 11th grade, or any student in 11th grade, the idea is that they will be a senior next year. So college applications, some of them open as early as June. So it really just depends. If you, for the most part, most seniors do start applying sometime in that September through October, November, December range. That's where a large majority of deadlines are. So that first semester of senior year is going to be really the bulk of college applications. Typically scholarships are a little bit later, but as we've said, rule of thumb for college really does depend per university. And
You guys got the applying to multiple colleges and letters of rec just now. Did you answer that one?
we did not.
Okay, it says, if a student is applying to multiple colleges, will the college counselors or teachers be giving multiple hard copies of the same letter of recommendation?
Yeah, so for that one, I'm honestly going to say most of the time schools aren't using hard copies anymore. A lot of this is electronic. It can depend per school. I mean, it's also going to depend on where a university's application can be found. Sometimes, like a common application, coalition application, it might be easier for a counselor to upload it like all in one space for it to go to multiple places. but so it's going to be individual. So Tanya, if you want to add more about what you're
Yeah.
doing on your end, go for it.
Sure. I'll just add that, for the students that I've been working with in the Beaverton School District and in my time the last several years, especially now more than ever, I would say that close to 90% of the colleges that the students are applying to, at least in these parts, use the Common Application Portal. And so what happens is if most of the colleges that the student is applying to are on that portal, then the teachers one time upload the letter of rec and the counselor one time uploads the letter of rec. Boom, it's done, it's easy. But there, of course, is going to be other times where kids apply through a different portal like the Coalition or Send EDU, or just through the college's portal on their website. And so sometimes the letter of rec has to be electronically sent differently. But yeah, no more hard copies, definitely. But hopefully that answers the question.
I would also add to, and I'm not a high school counselor, but I know that they have a lot on their plate. And so when you request a letter of recommendation, please give ample time for them to write that letter of recommendation. Do not request it like, oh, I need this in 2 weeks. At least a month is going to be at least very, very generous for your high school counselors.
I see a question about establishing residency. And so Tanya, I'm sure that's probably something that you have lots of conversations about. I don't know if you want to, I have an assumption of what I think maybe generally, I know for California, the answer, but I'm just curious what you would say.
Yeah, but that's a good, I actually didn't see that question, but I love that question for a lot of reasons. But I won't bring my personal stuff into this, but I found that it just depends on the state, and it's really difficult to get residency in some states because of course they want your money. They want that out-of-state money. And there are colleges like the University of Utah, for example, is one school that has the WUI, the Western Undergraduate Exchange, but they also have where if you live there for up to at least 5 of the weeks in the summer, and you prove that you have a job and that you're living there for at least that amount of time. And there's ways that you can prove that you're living there, but it's very difficult to do, even in the states where they say that it's easy. So it's not something that anyone really should be relying on.
I think especially for California, from what I heard, it's pretty much not an option, right? It's not going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Some
okay.
people will say that, oh, my dad lives in California and works there part-time. And so he has an apartment there or something. And can I just say that I'm living with him? It's like, well, no, you graduated from a school in Oregon, your high school transcript says Oregon, and where are they filing taxes? It's a lot more heavy than that. So I would make the assumption that in general, it's kind of a no. Unless your whole family ups and moves there and you really do live there full time and can prove that.
Yeah, and like you said, Tanya, it's complicated based on the states. I worked for a school, a public state school in Colorado for a while, and for Colorado, it used to be a lot more loosey-goosey, where it was easy to establish that residency, but then they cracked down, and so a student moving to Colorado to establish residency really has to be totally independent of their parents for at least 1 year. So again, it's going to depend on the university. You really need to check in with that university to find out what the situation is specifically.
And I also will add, if you're attending a WUI institution, typically the rule of thumb is you cannot work towards residency if you are on a reduced tuition program. So if you are a WUI student, you can't say, oh, well, I'm going to come here and then I have WUI, the next year I'll just be an in-state student. That's not how it works. If you're WUI and you're getting that rate, the idea is that you are an Oregon resident still, but you just are on WUI. So keep that in mind for any WUI institutions as well.
It's just best to make the assumption that you're not going to get the in-state, that you're not going to get residency, and work towards applying for more scholarships and communicating with the financial aid offices of the universities that you're truly passionate about going to, and that making sure that it's the right fit for you, because college is about finding your fit. And if it financially works out, then that's great. But if not, then maybe it's not meant to be, That's my advice. And so in transitioning, it looks like there's no more current questions, and we're 2 minutes away from our next session. I'd love to just thank our guests that we had here today. So we had Anne Marie and is it Schaller?
It's Shaler. Think of it like Taylor with an SH.
Okay, Shaler, Lisa, and Anne Marie, thank you so much for coming. That was really fun. And I was messaging my coworker on the side, just saying, we were saying how lovely you guys have been, and you work so well together as a team. And it was just truly a blessing to have you here. So thanks.
Thanks for having us.
And feel free to stay on if you want.